The streets of Algiers were alive with tension, the kind so thick it seemed to seep into the very air. It's 1957, and the city is no longer a bustling Mediterranean hub, but a battlefield, a microcosm of the larger struggle engulfing Algeria. The sounds of life, children playing, vendors selling their wares, music spilling out of cafes, are drowned out by the sharp crack of gunfire, the thud of boots running through narrow alleys, and the distant, earth-shaking sound of explosions. This is the Battle of Algiers, a chapter of history defined by its relentless brutality, its moral ambiguity, and its lasting legacy.
To truly understand the events that unfolded in the streets and alleys of Algiers, we must first step back in time to the moment when the seeds of conflict were sown. Algeria, for over 130 years, had been a French colony. But unlike other colonies, Algeria was not merely considered part of the French Empire, it was declared an integral part of France itself. This was not a distant land governed by colonial administrators. This was, in the eyes of the French government, France.
And yet, for the indigenous Algerians, the reality was far from the ideals of liberté, égalité, fraternité. French Algeria was a society divided by race, religion, and privilege. The European settlers, known as pieds noirs, lived lives of relative luxury, enjoying the best land, education, and opportunities. Meanwhile, the Muslim majority, 95% of the population, lived in grinding poverty, crammed into overcrowded neighborhoods like the Casbah. They were denied basic political representation, economic opportunities, and even the dignity of their own identity. To the French, they were not Algerians, they were simply Muslims.
By the mid-20th century, the contradictions of French Algeria had become impossible to ignore. Across the globe, colonial empires were crumbling as independence movements swept through Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. For many Algerians, the time had come to demand their freedom. But how does a people rise up against one of the most powerful colonial empires in the world? The answer came in 1954, with the formation of the National Liberation Front, or FLN. The FLN launched their revolution on November 1, 1954, in what became known as Toussaint Rouge, Red All Saints' Day. Across Algeria, FLN fighters attacked police stations, military outposts, and colonial infrastructure. These were not random acts of violence. They were a calculated declaration of war. The message was clear. The era of French rule was over.
For the first 2 years of the conflict, much of the fighting took place in the countryside. But by 1956, the FLN leadership realized that to win their war, they needed to take the fight to the cities. Their focus turned to Algiers, the capital and symbolic heart of French Algeria. The Casbah, overcrowded, winding, and vibrant, became the epicenter of the FLN's urban campaign. To the French, it was a mysterious, impenetrable maze. To the Algerians, it was home, sanctuary, and fortress. Under the leadership of figures like Youssef Saidi, the FLN established a clandestine network of fighters, couriers, and informants.
One of the most infamous attacks took place on September 30, 1956. 3 Algerian women, dressed in European clothing to avoid suspicion, planted bombs in 3 separate locations: the Milk Bar Café, the Air France office, and the Algiers University Library. The explosions killed 3 people and injured dozens more. For the FLN, these attacks were not random acts of terror. They were strategic blows meant to shake the French administration and shatter the illusion of security.
The French response was swift and ruthless. Determined to crush the rebellion, the colonial authorities declared a state of emergency and handed control of the city to the military. Leading the counter-insurgency effort was General Jacques Massu, a decorated veteran of World War II and the Indochina War. Under Massu's command, the French military implemented a strategy of total war. They sealed off the Casbah, conducted house-to-house searches, arrested thousands, and relied heavily on torture. Interrogation centers were set up where suspects were beaten, electrocuted, waterboarded, and in some cases thrown from helicopters.
One by one, the FLN's leaders in Algiers were captured or killed. By the summer of 1957, the resistance network in the city had been dismantled. The Casbah was occupied, its residents subjected to constant surveillance and harassment. The FLN's urban campaign had effectively been crushed. Yet for all their military success, the French had sown the seeds of their own defeat. Reports of torture and brutality sparked outrage across France and around the world. The Battle of Algiers became a symbol of colonial oppression and moral failure. And instead of breaking the Algerian spirit, the French crackdown hardened it. The Battle of Algiers was over, but the war raged on. In the countryside, FLN guerrillas continued their relentless campaign. By 1962, after nearly 8 years of conflict, France conceded defeat. Algeria became an independent nation at staggering cost. Over 1 million Algerians were killed. Millions were displaced.
The legacy of the Battle of Algiers is complex. For Algerians, it is a symbol of sacrifice and resilience. For the French, it is a painful reminder of colonialism's moral cost. And for the world, it remains a case study in urban warfare, resistance, and the unyielding human desire for freedom. The Casbah still stands, a living monument to the struggle for independence. Its narrow alleys echo with history, and though the wounds of the past have not fully healed, the spirit of resistance that defined the city lives on. The Battle of Algiers was not just a fight for a city, it was a fight for dignity, identity, and freedom. And its lessons continue to resonate wherever people stand against oppression.
Enjoying this journey through history? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a 5-minute dive into the past. Got a historical mystery or epic story you want us to cover next? Drop it in the comments. Your idea could be our next episode on History in 5.